Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham turned on each other in the England dressing room. And it happened just minutes after the final whistle against Ghana. It wasn't just a heated exchange. It wasn't a misunderstanding between teammates. It wasn't the press exaggerating what they'd heard through the grapevine. This is serious. Nothing like this has ever erupted inside an England squad in the hours following a World Cup opener. And there's a detailed sources close to the camp still haven't fully confirmed publicly yet. And the worst part? It hasn't even come to light yet. Over the next few minutes, you're going to understand exactly what went down in that dressing room, why it happened, and why this changes everything for England's chances in this tournament. The match itself had already left the squad fractured. England and Ghana played out a goalless draw, a result that felt like a loss to everyone inside that stadium. The attacking shape was sluggish, the chances were minimal, and by the time Bukayo Saka and the rest of the front line came off the pitch, the mood was already toxic. But when this happens, right after a World Cup opener, when you've just drawn a match you were supposed to win, it's not just any problem you're dealing with. The dressing room atmosphere becomes everything. One wrong word, one moment of blame shifting, and suddenly you've got a fractured squad heading into the most critical tournament of their lives. And the behind-the-scenes tension here? It's worse than what you're seeing on the surface. The thing is, this didn't start in those 90 minutes. This had been building for weeks. During training camp, sources revealed that Kane and Thomas Tuchel had already clashed over tactics, with the captain pushing for a more direct, physical approach while Bellingham impressed Tuchel with his progressive passing and positional intelligence. Declan Rice watched these conversations unfold. Morgan Rogers noticed the divide forming between the older guard and the younger attacking players. And when Bellingham came off in the 65th minute against Ghana, visibly frustrated after a shaky performance, the tension simmered even closer to the surface. Kane, meanwhile, had barely touched the ball. He was isolated, starved of service, and everyone in that stadium knew it. By the time the final whistle went, blame was already looking for a home. And that's when it happened. According to information circulating in the England camp, approximately 15 minutes after the match ended, Kane approached Bellingham near the lockers in the main dressing room. The setting was tense. Players slumped on benches, media still circling outside, the weight of that goalless draw crushing everyone. Kane allegedly placed a hand on Bellingham's shoulder and began speaking, his voice low but firm. He was focusing on Bellingham's positioning in midfield, reportedly saying that the Real Madrid midfielder had left defensive gaps that Ghana had nearly exploited in the second half. The thing is, Bellingham wasn't having it. The young midfielder, already frustrated with his own performance and feeling singled out, responded with comments questioning whether Kane's own movement and runs had actually created that isolation in midfield. And that's where the temperature changed. Kane's jaw tightened. His voice rose slightly. The entire dressing room felt silent. Players' heads lifted from the benches. Reece James turned in his seat. Saka stood up as if to move closer. And that's when Bellingham allegedly made a gesture. Sharp, dismissive, and responded with something that forced the coaching staff to step in. Darren Fletcher moved between them. The assistant coach guided Bellingham toward the showers. Kane remained standing, staring at the floor. Nobody spoke for nearly 10 seconds. The silence was complete. And nobody in that dressing room could believe what they'd just witnessed. But to understand why this moment is so serious, you need to know who was standing on either side. On one side, you had Kane, England's captain, all-time leading scorer with more than 60 international goals, a player who's led this team through 2 Euro finals and a World Cup semi-final. He represents the senior leadership, the experience, the belief that standards need to be held and accountability matters. On the other side, you had Bellingham, 19 years old when he joined Real Madrid, already a regular starter in one of Europe's elite midfields. The future of English football at this World Cup and beyond. He represents the new generation, the talent, the players who believe the game has evolved beyond the old ways. And in the middle of all this, you had Tuchel trying to hold it together, Declan Rice watching carefully to see who he needed to support, and Bukayo Saka and the other senior figures observing how this was going to shake out. Hold on, because the most controversial detail here is one that could completely change how you see this situation. The reactions started immediately. Dressing room sources report that Jordan Pickford and John Stones exchanged glances that said everything. Veteran players recognizing that something fundamental had shifted in the squad dynamic. The younger players, including Morgan Rogers, watched carefully to see which way Tuchel would lean. The coaching staff, alongside Darren Fletcher, became increasingly concerned that Tuchel's hands-off man management approach had allowed this kind of ego clash to develop without early intervention. Meanwhile, the FA is monitoring this closely. Any public fallout, any social media leak, any confirmation of this story will trigger serious questions about squad harmony and Tuchel's authority. And social media has already split into two camps. Some are defending Kane's right as captain to hold a young player accountable, saying leadership means setting standards. Others are arguing that Bellingham shouldn't be bullied by an older star, that Kane needs to accept he's no longer the undisputed center of this team's future. The press is circling. Multiple outlets have sources in the camp now. Now, Thomas Tuchel is caught between two impossible decisions. If he disciplines Kane and removes the captain's authority, he risks alienating the experienced spine of his squad. The leadership and morale that comes from having a figure like Kane leading the way. But if he shields Kane or separates Bellingham, he signals to the younger generation that political seniority matters more than talent. And he fractures the progressive rebuilding he promised. Both options risk creating an unbearable atmosphere heading into a knockout tournament where depth and unity are non-negotiable. The clock is ticking. England has 10 days before the next group match. Tuchel must decide whether to address this publicly, confirming the rift and feeding media speculation, or handle it privately and let the rumors fester. One wrong move, and this dressing room splits completely. What happens next could determine whether England progresses from this group. Tuchel may be forced to alter his team selection, reduce Kane's minutes, bench Bellingham, or shift the entire tactical shape to try and mask this fracture. The confidence that was already fragile after that goalless draw is now genuinely compromised. Squad morale in training over the next 48 hours will tell you everything. And here's what nobody's talking about yet. Declan Rice was seen texting someone immediately after the confrontation. And if that message reveals he was alerting a journalist or someone close to the media, that's how this story leaked so fast. There could be video footage from a nearby mobile phone or security camera that captured the exact moment Bellingham made that gesture. And if that emerges, it completely shifts the narrative about who escalated things. This is the weight of what just happened in that dressing room. England came into this World Cup with momentum and belief, and now, hours after their opening match, that unity has cracked. And look, this is far from over. This is the information circulating right now. Over the next few hours, new details should start to drip out, and they could turn this entire story upside down. Over to you. Was Kane right to hold a young star accountable, or did the captain bully a player who was already struggling? Write it down below. And if you don't want to find out about the next bombshell after everyone else, subscribe and turn on notifications now, because when this fully blows up, you'll want to be the first to know, not the last. But here's what makes this even more explosive. Morgan Rogers has been quietly positioning himself as a potential beneficiary if Kane's influence diminishes. Sources suggest the younger attacking players are watching carefully to see whether Tuchel will back experience or talent. Anthony Gordon, Marcus Rashford, Noni Madueke, they're all paying attention. If Bellingham gets protected, it sends a message that youth and progression matter. If Kane walks away unchallenged, it reinforces the old hierarchy. Either way, someone's power base in this squad just shifted. And that's not just dressing room politics. That's the future of England's attacking shape for the next 5 years, potentially being rewritten in real time. Tuchel's post-match press conference is coming soon, and every word he says will either pour gasoline on this fire or try to contain it. If he acknowledges the confrontation, he confirms the rift exists and opens himself up to endless questions about squad harmony and his ability to manage personalities at the highest level. If he deflects or denies it, he looks weak and out of touch, and the media narrative becomes about a manager trying to hide problems rather than solve them. He cannot win this moment. Multiple sources close to the coaching staff reveal that assistant Darren Fletcher had already flagged concerns about allowing this kind of tension to build without early intervention. The staff knew a flashpoint was coming. They just didn't expect it to happen this publicly, this soon, with this much witness testimony in the dressing room. What's being said behind the scenes now is that Kane feels his authority as captain has been challenged in front of the entire squad, and that's something he won't easily recover from. But Bellingham's allies argue that a young player shouldn't have to accept public criticism from a teammate, no matter the rank, especially when systemic team problems are the real issue. John Stones, Mark Guehi, Dan Burn, the senior defenders are reportedly having private conversations about how to navigate this without being forced to choose sides. Jordan Pickford, as goalkeeper and leader, is in an impossible position. And Declan Rice, the midfield anchor who bridges both generations, is supposedly being lobbied by both camps to publicly support their narrative. Here's the detail that hasn't fully emerged yet. Sources indicate there are audio recordings from inside the dressing room that captured at least portions of the confrontation. If those get leaked, if we hear the actual tone and the specific words exchanged, this becomes a completely different story. The narrative could flip in seconds. Right now, it's he said he said. Once audio surfaces, it becomes proof. And that's the cliffhanger hanging over everyone in that squad right now. The reality is that England's World Cup campaign just tilted on its axis. A draw against Ghana should have been manageable, recoverable. But a fractured dressing room heading into a critical second group match is a completely different nightmare. Tuchel needs to reunite this squad before their next fixture, and he has roughly 10 days to do it. He needs Kane and Bellingham in the same tactical shape, operating together, trusting each other. Right now, trust is gone. And the clock doesn't stop for anyone. Not for ego, not for pride, not for principle. This is what happens when ambition meets pressure at a World Cup. This is what happens when a captain feels threatened and a young superstar refuses to accept being scapegoated. This is what happens when everything matters and nobody can afford to lose face. England came to this tournament to win it. And now they're fighting fires in their own dressing room instead of preparing for their next opponent. The tournament hasn't even really started yet, and England's unity is already fractured beyond easy repair.